Is everybody back? Let's see. Yeah, Councilor Olson. Yes, everybody's back. I'll open council time for Wednesday, January the 5th. Begin with old business. And approve the minutes of the last meeting.
The motion or second?
I think we have a motion and a second. Last meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Council meetings. Is this, Kathleen, is this about meeting remotely or in person? Is that?
That's correct. So the council
Okay.
had previously approved working or having these meetings remotely through the end of the year. So this is an opportunity for the council to have a discussion and decide future council meetings. Keep in mind, we still have to provide online and phone access for our community based on the proclamation and direction from our governor during the COVID times. So the options are continue as is with remote full time or move to hybrid, which would allow council to come in person if you'd like. If that is the case, we would have to follow some rules of wearing masks while we're indoors, social distancing and other items. And then also, if you want to allow the public to come in, there may be some restrictions on that as well on the social distancing masks and maybe a limited number that could attend if you choose to open that up.
I'll open the discussion.
I'm happy to begin, Madam Chair.
All right, please go ahead.
So obviously we need to maintain the hybrid no matter what. And it's really two separate big issues. One, do we come in? And two, the second, does the public come in? I think the public's demanding it. I think it'll be really challenging for the manager and us as a whole to further the orders that are in place by the state as well as by the federal government. Nevertheless, I want to come in. I want to open it to the public. I want to proceed towards some normalcy. I saw Dr. Melnick on earlier. I don't know if he's still on. I thought he was going to give us an update right away on the wrestling situation, which would certainly also involve an update on what's happening in the county. But what I'm reading globally is, and heard it from the Biden administration as well, you know, Omicron is a concern, but it's not the disaster we forecasted 2 years ago. It's a concern. It shows a lot less severe. It shows that it's kind of taking over. We're kind of moving towards an endemic situation. We have treatments every day that are coming in place and becoming more readily available. We have the vaccines and boosters available. We are in a much different position than we were 2 years ago. So I'm willing to come in, and I know it would be challenging for the building to figure out who gets masks, who doesn't, who has vaccines and who doesn't, and what's required by the state in order to open the building to the public. But those are my druthers. I just throw it out there.
Madam Chair.
Councilor.
Yeah, I disagree. I think, at least for now, we're still in a massive uptick of Omicron COVID cases. There's still a significant number of people that are unvaccinated. Our hospitals are more crowded than ever today than they were in any time during this pandemic. So I think opening it up right now would create a significant, a significant hardship on our staff in terms of how many people do we allow in, do we ask if they're vaccinated or not? We must require them to wear masks. I think it just creates more discord and difficulty than is necessary. I also personally am staying very close to home right now. I'm vaccinated and boosted. I don't want to get COVID, and I don't want to create an environment where we have people, whether they're unvaccinated or vaccinated, in a situation where we could be responsible for an outbreak or a spread. And I think if we just waited another month, I heard this morning that this the peak of this particular outbreak or spike should be over by the first part of February. I think it's prudent for us just to stay steady right now, do our business in public. We're meeting all of our legal requirements. We're doing our business in public. But for me right now, I think opening up would, I would not support that process or that plan. Thanks.
Other comments?
Chair,
Councilman?
I echo Councillor Olson. I actually am looking forward to eventually getting back to as much in person as we can. But I think that it would be a mistake to make that move right now during this huge spike. Last year, we had talked about taking it on a month-by-month basis before the decision to just extend it through the end of the year. And I'd recommend that. I think that it's pretty dissonant to open up to the public while we're in the middle of this spike for attendance when we do have all of the available online and phone mechanisms for folks to check in. I think there's a few things we can do to make that a little bit more accessible, and I do want to talk about that. But right now, I think that it makes the most sense to remain virtual. And I definitely echo the sentiment about the stress on staff. Having to monitor and enforce mask provisions, distancing, attendance numbers, I think is quite a lot to ask. And we don't need to right now. And I would suggest that we give it another month and see where we are then.
Other comments? Well, I would, my preference actually is also to meet in person. We're going to have a hybrid. I understand that there would be some difficulty in, counting the numbers of people. If we have to keep social distancing for the individuals who come into the building, that would create some difficulty. But after all, we actually are representatives of the people of Clark County. And while our staff they make the county, they help the county run, but our real boss is the people. And I think that the people are asking that we come back and open up. Unfortunately, if you're going to stores, I don't know whether you've just stayed in your, in your homes or what, but I haven't, and I go to stores all the time. And while at the beginning of opening up, for instance, stores would close when they had enough people in and make you wait in line. That's all done now. They're not doing that anymore. And this Omicron virus, and I know we'll hear from Dr. Melnick, but from what I've been reading and hearing, it's much less serious than the original 19 and Delta. That really it's kind of how a pandemic works, is that these viruses get a little bit less, these variants get a little less, potent, or whatever you want to call it. They're less, they harm less. Now, it would be interesting to, and I'm hoping we'll get the update, a little bit of an update anyway, on what's happening in the hospitals, etc. But I think that the people do want us to open up. And frankly, if you look at other places around the nation, I've looked at other council meetings they're meeting. They have no plexiglass. They have no masks. They're meeting like regular people meet. Like regular representatives meet and allow people to come in and speak to their elected representatives. And so I think it's important, but it's not my decision, it's our decision. So at this point, what I see is a 2-to-2 situation. I'm really not fond of coming in and wearing a mask. My belief is masks really do nothing. In fact, they're harmful to people in many reports I've read. So that said, I don't like the idea of actually sitting and wearing a mask, but if in order to allow people to come and see eye to eye with the people we represent, I think it's an important thing to do. So,
Chair, this is Kathleen, if I can. I just wanted to let the council know that I know Dr. Malik is here today to talk about the wrestling update specifically. He is planning on having, not at next week, if you want to have a Board of Health meeting next week, but the following meeting towards the end of January, he will be having the different hospitals and doctors who were there to come and join him to provide an update on what they're seeing in the hospitals during that Board of Health meeting as well. So I just wanted to let you know you'll get a more in-depth firsthand update from the hospitals themselves at the second Board of Health meeting in January.
Madam Chair.
thank you. Councilor Baumann.
I'm number 5 here not to speak until now. And part of the reason for that is weighing what the rest of you have said, along with what I hear from the community too. There's no doubt that we have many in the community who are saying, I want to have the meetings open, and your terminology of being eye to eye. I want to be able to be eye to eye with my representatives. But I am not one to be out in the stores and so on, as some of the rest of you may be, both in the community as a whole and on the council. Curbside delivery is absolutely wonderful, and the people who do that service are protected as well. So as I weigh the balance here, I think the idea of going for another month and considering during that time period what has happened, not just with the COVID spike, we know that that's going to continue, but with the hospitals, and then the great concern of what treatments are going to be available in the hospitals given the spike that we have, so that as more people contract COVID-19 or Omicron, what is the availability of those therapeutics for our population? And it wouldn't be a concern if we didn't have a spike because of the development of new therapeutics and so on. But given the fact that the demand is so much higher now, there is a concern for that is evolving. I think in a month we'll be in a better position to evaluate that, should there be a problem that would occur with anyone who came into our building. And I have to agree. I mean, we have no choice but to enforce some of the rules that are imposed upon us for masking and distancing because they're felt to be appropriate. And to do that in a rapid situation of entry into the building, it is challenging, it is difficult. Let's wait a month, see what better job we can do in accommodating the public in the meantime, because that is of critical importance, especially when we're not seeing eye to eye, but are seeing each other in a virtual way. I think most of us have the feeling of strong connection with our community and with our constituents. I know that I do, but it is a different one than when it's in person. It just needs to be a powerful and strong and ongoing communication with them. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like what I hear from the council is that we should probably continue to do virtual until, at least until the end of January, for one more month.
Madam Chair, could I add some additional comments? Because after
ahead.
everything that was added, and so by starting the conversation, I just wanted to start the conversation. I wasn't indicating to you how I would vote. I think everyone here has expressed very valid concerns, and they're all true. And I think it really is reflective of what our greater society is going to. I guess what I would question is, why do we have, I thought we were going to actually have a Board of Health this week because of the wrestling update. Why are we having to put it off a couple of weeks to hear
Yeah,
from the hospitals? Why can't we have Dr. Melnick give us an update today? I'm hopeful that, in much the same way that he gives us advice to inform us as to whether to open to the public or not, he's doing that to the schools as well. He's not the decision maker, but he is reflecting what's happening out in the community and with our hospitals. So, I see his name. Is he there? Can we hear from him right now?
If I can respond, please, Chair, if that's okay. So
Yes, please.
Thank you. Per the council's request last week, the council wanted an update on the wrestling this week. There is no Board of Health scheduled this week. There would be one for next week. So it was agreed to put this on the council time agenda, which is under 1.5 on the agenda, to give Dr. Melnick an update on the wrestling. I would caution, he can certainly, I think, provide a very high, like what numbers are we seeing, but I would caution any lengthy discussions outside of the wrestling and maybe some numbers today, because this is not the Board of Health. This is a special update on the wrestling per the council's request. If the council wants to continue with 2 Board of Health meetings, there would be one next Wednesday in which he can provide a higher level update. And like I said, the second meeting in January, he will be including the hospitals. So this is at the council's request that he is here to provide an update today on the agenda for the wrestling specifically. But I would ask legal too, but I am talking with them because you're not the Board of Health today, you're at the Clark County Council, and this is a very specific topic.
So Madam Chair, I would ask that we put this decision over until we hear from that, perhaps at the Board of Health meeting, since the 2 topics are completely related, and that we do continue with what we're doing right now until we have, and we'll be hopefully at the tail end of this spike, which hopefully will be the last spike that we have to be concerned about. So that would be my motion to defer a decision, continue what we're doing, but to defer a decision until after we can have that Board of Health full briefing.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Olson?
Yeah, I don't know that
In a second, there's a motion on the floor.
I'm not gonna
Are
second
you
the
going to
motion.
second it?
I'm not going to second the motion. No.
Okay, so just wait for the discussion then, please. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second it. Now, let's have a discussion. Councilor Olson.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know that I'm going to hear anything between today and next week that would change the path in terms of waiting another month to meet in person. So I don't know that putting this decision off to next week really makes any sense to me. There's going to be really very little difference between now and next week in terms of whether we wait another month to discuss coming back in person again. So I would not support putting the decision off. I think we just wait another month and take a look at it then. Thanks.
Okay, other councilors, discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, which is to wait to really make a decision until after we get a briefing from as the Board of Health. All in favor, please say aye.
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 No?
No.
One no? Do we have to?
No, I said no. No.
Okay. Councilor Bowerman?
Uh, yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Yes, thank you. I would like to suggest that we go back again to 2 meetings of the Board of Health. They need not be, both of them, lengthy, complete with a lot of slides and so on. But it seems that at this point in time, we do need a more regular update, as does the public. So would that make the next Board of Health meeting be next week then?
yes.
That's
I
correct.
think
Yeah.
that would be excellent and would like to suggest that.
Okay, so you're a yes on the motion then?
Yes, I was.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's what I
Oh,
was.
I'm sorry. Yes.
The motion passes. Well, we will defer this solution until after we have heard from Dr. Melnick at the Board of next Wednesday. Okay, moving on to the next item, 1.3. Under old business is the COVID leave policy. Kathleen.
Yes, thank you. And before I present this to the council, I just wanted to let you all know that I want to welcome officially William Winfield. He is on today as well. I think his video just came on. And welcome him to Clark County as our new HR director, and just, have you guys see him virtually for the first time. And like I said, I will be inviting him to some meetings next week to have more thorough discussions. So I'm very happy and grateful that William has decided to join us in Clark County. So with that said, this policy addendum before you today provides admin leave for employees who work both in juvenile detention as well as the corrections deputies who work in the jail. The admin leave is provided to these two groups due to the fact that their specific work in the county does not always allow the ability to maintain 6-foot distancing. The policy expired on December 31st. This request is to extend this policy until June 30th, 2022, with an option to terminate this policy with 30 days notice. The recent guidance from CDC does not apply to congregate settings, therefore it does not apply to these two work groups. Therefore, we will also update the policy upon any new guidance that is issued by the state of Washington and or public health. This is an ongoing policy. As you remember, during the beginning of the pandemic, we did offer this to employees, and then it was restricted starting, I believe, last July 1st, just to those two settings as they're unable to provide that social distancing. And like I said, the 30 days notice also gives us the ability to, if for some reason COVID goes away before June 30th, and we're not seeing the uptick in the risk to our employees, then the county can decide to terminate it sooner than June 30th.
Okay, are there questions of the council?
Madam Chair,
Councilor Brownlee.
I do have a question on the proposed policy. It looks like in the second bullet, if someone has been exposed to an individual who's tested positive for COVID, that they'll receive paid leave for 14 days. And that's if they're not fully vaccinated. But if they are fully vaccinated and have symptoms, then they receive paid leave for up to only 10 days. Why that particular differential with the preference to the individual who has not been vaccinated?
I believe the second bullet is for those who have tested positive. So that has the 14 days, whereas if somebody has symptoms and has tested negative, they might have a delayed positive. So it's out of precaution. And this is following the state and the CDC guidelines. So they haven't tested positive for the 10 days. And so I believe by the time it would turn into a positive, it would be before the 10 days, 10 days or before.
So once they test positive, then do they revert back up to the second bullet?
I
For
think
a total of 24 days? How does this work?
I would have to talk to staff a little bit more specifically on this, but because I have not had to administer it, thank goodness, to any of my direct reports, but it has been used within the county. So, and I know some of the CDC guidelines right now, if you are vaccinated and you're exposed, you don't have to quarantine unless you have symptoms. So it is becoming a little bit more lenient and developing as COVID is developing. But I would assume if they test positive within that 10 days, then it would start the 14 days. That would be my assumption, but I would need to double check with
Well,
my
and now the
HR
quarantine,
benefits team.
and now the quarantine period is not as long as stated here.
So the CDC new quarantine levels does not apply to congregate settings. And so these two do not have a change based on the new CDC guidelines. So because they're working in a jail and a juvenile detention facility, the new CDC guidelines of the lesser time off does not apply to these groups. I know CDC and the state is reviewing those right now. And so that's why we added on here, as soon as we get that updated guidance from the state or public health, we'll update this to make sure we're in compliance. If this were to apply for any other group in the county, which it does not, the new CDC guidance of the 5 days would be in effect, but it does not apply to these two groups. And I will also share, I just got notified that Governor Inslee, I believe, is giving an update on COVID this afternoon as well at 2:30.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, if not, I would entertain a motion because I believe we need a motion to pass this.
I'd make a motion to approve. These are very difficult decisions to make, and I appreciate Kathleen getting into the detail of it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the COVID leave policy for the individuals and the groups included in this memo, juvenile justice and the jail. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. I just, and I want to welcome Mr. Winfield. I know that Kathleen is very relieved to have you. So welcome on board, and we look forward to a long career here with Clark County. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Moving on to 1.4, mini initiative. Is Leslie going to present? Okay, Leslie.
Yes, good morning, counselors. We're here to talk about the mini initiative. This is the one that's entitled an ordinance prohibiting all mandates within Clark County that discriminates against a citizen's health status and or health information privacy. Pursuant to the Home Rule Charter, the auditor's office was required to certify this particular mini initiative, and that was certified on December 30th. Pursuant to the Home Rule Charter, Charter 7.3, that once the auditor has transmitted the mini initiative petition to the council is required to hold a public meeting on the proposed ordinance or to discuss an amendment to the existing ordinance within 60 days. So the deadline for that within 60 days from December 30th is February 28th. So it would mean that you would have to have a hearing before February 28th. Looking at the schedule for the council's meetings, the meetings that would comply with that would be either February 1 or February 15. And then once you have that meeting, there will need to be public comment. Then you would need to have a meeting within 30 days after that meeting to take a vote on whether to, it says on whether to enact, reject, or modify proposed ordinance. So depending on when you have the hearing, let's say if you have it February 1, the first hearing, you would need to have a hearing to vote on either the 15th of February or March 1st. If you had the first meeting on February 15th, then you would have to have a hearing to vote on it on either March 1st or March 15th. So that's the process that would have to occur. And it's my understanding that today, the reason you're meeting is basically to figure out which date you're going to set for the first hearing. I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Do you have questions of Leslie? I don't hear any. So maybe we should begin the discussion then about when we would like to put this on the calendar for hearing. Any preference? I'll say I would prefer that we do it sooner rather than later. They've been gathering these signatures for a number of months, or at least a couple, 3 months, and have turned in and received the certification to go ahead. So I don't think that we should delay. But that's my thought. I'd take further comment from the council. I would say though, I predict that if we would hear it the first week in February, that is a morning meeting. We may want to switch that meeting to an evening meeting and the 15th to a morning meeting, just because of, I think, the number of people that may want to listen in or have a voice in this. And Kathleen, I'm assuming that we could do that still, be able to change the time.
Yes, with adequate notice, we should be able to
Yeah,
change the
okay,
time.
all
Yes,
right.
I think the
Okay,
24 hours.
so-
minimum.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'll open it up to the council to further discuss when you would like to put this on the agenda.
Madam Chair, if I may, the only, whether we hear it sooner versus later, I don't know that there's any real argument pro or con, other than essentially they should have their day in court. The comment I want to make is, I think they want to have their day in court. I think they want to be present and eye to eye with us. And so, hearing it or setting it perhaps later in time, once we're a little bit farther through this current surge. And I mean, we're learning something more every day. And, as Kathleen alluded to a few minutes ago with that HR motion, it's not that things are getting more lenient. It's just that we're learning more and more every day from different parts of the world about what Omicron means, what different treatments mean for us, what the boosters mean, what natural immunity mean. We're learning something every day. So I'm hopeful that we can address this issue for the people that signed this petition and want to appear in person. And I think our best chance of having that is to schedule it as late as possible.
And my understanding then, as late as possible, would be February 15th, unless we create another day to hear it in February. But Leslie just said the 28th is the last day we could hear it. Other
That's
comment?
correct.
Well, we need to make a decision. So I would appreciate others chiming in. We've heard from Councilor Medved. I've said my piece.
Chair,
Councilor Lentz.
I see no reason to delay. I'm in favor of the first.
I'm sure. And I'm pretty ambivalent in terms of the date, so sooner rather than later is fine with me as well.
Madam Chair,
Councilor Baumann.
I would certainly concur with that. I also think that there's not a whole lot of difference in that 2-week period as far as what we know, what we learned, and so on. So it might make those 8,000 or whatever valid signators feel better if we did it on the 1st.
Okay, it looks like then that we'll have this hearing on the 1st. Thanks, Councilman Medved. We'll have this hearing on the 1st Tuesday of February. I am going to ask, unless it absolutely conflicts with others' schedules, that we do this in the evening so that we can have the participation whether it will be in person or virtual, we need to allow for as much participation as possible, and that is one way to do it, is to have it in the evening. And the other thing that I would say is, as if we happen to be still virtual at that time, I have heard from people, I continue to hear from people that they cannot get on to the WebEx, that they are, that the message is, the administrator has not started the meeting or whatever. So we really, maybe they're doing it wrong, but we surely need to be able to have people get in. And obviously we've had people able to get in, although a lot of people call in. Can people join the WebEx as in a panel form or?
Yes. Well, what they do, there's two options online. There's a link, which if they're on their computer, they can click on the link and then they're on. We don't add them as a panelist because panelists have the ability to mute and unmute yourselves. So only the council and staff is added as a panelist, but we can see them. They can raise their hand and they have they'll see exactly what you're seeing. And then those can also call in, and the phone number is listed right by the link online. And I would encourage, if you're getting any of that feedback or concerns, please have them reach out to staff so that we can make sure that we're helping them if there's an issue, and that if we need.
All right, thank you. Okay, so do we have any conflict with counselors about making this an evening hearing on the first Tuesday of February?
Madam Chair,
Councilor Brown?
I don't have a conflict. I'm perfectly happy to do it in the evening, but I find it interesting that there is an assumption that evening brings in more testimony. Is that correct? Do we have data to substantiate that? It seems like we have a lot of testimony for our daytime meetings. I just wonder if we have that data.
I don't know, Kathleen, do you have data? And it would be historical data, not these last 2 years.
Okay, I would have to ask about, I don't know if we keep that for the last, prior to COVID. During COVID, since we've gone nighttime versus daytime, I have, without having specific numbers, I don't recall having more people show up in an evening meeting versus, I've actually think we've had more during the day, but I would have to look to staff and see if there's a way we can pull that data during COVID. I don't know if we have that data prior because we were in person, but we can certainly take a look.
That has been my impression, that we've had more during the day, and I don't have any substantiation for that. I just wanted to check that it's a wise move to put it at night, because that also leaves out a different group of people.
Yeah, well, it's at 6 o'clock, and that's possible. When we have during COVID not addressed super controversial issues as in the past, and normally when we have more controversial or more people have shown an interest, and certainly in this case, we've got a mini petition was, received the number of signatures, in fact, maybe 3,000 over, 4,000 over. Anyway, so that's why I say it. I mean, when we've had the equestrian hearing or we have various other hearings, that room has extra space. We have to open up the wall and there are hundreds of people there. So, and they say they work during the day, they could not come and speak during the day, they need to have it in the evening. So that's where I get it. I mean, I have experienced the evening hearings being much more full, particularly when there is an issue that has a larger interest group. So, but if the council wants to meet at 10 a.m. instead of 6 p.m., I'll take your direction. I made the suggestion, and if you'd like to keep it at 10 a.m., then that is your decision. So I'd like,
What was the date again? Which Tuesday in February?
the first one.
First.
Okay, so I do have, I think we have a homeless meeting in the morning that may conflict. The evening is free for me. What I wanted to comment on is something that should be a public discussion, I think. Because you mentioned the equestrian meeting, if we do vote to have it open to the public and we're actually there, I think we need to have set the expectations of how many people will be allowed in, what the requirements will be. And the same would go for those that call in or are online in the hybrid version, or if we do it entirely by, we heard so many criticism of cutting off the wrestling comments after an hour because people didn't expect it. They had a whole room full of people somewhere else wanting to comment. And then we kind of, after an hour, said, well, we don't have time for more comments. So, especially in the evening, what are the rules going to be? Are we going to limit it to 1 minute comments? Are we going to limit it to an hour or two of comments? Whether in person or not, I think we need to set realistic expectations for the public as to how it'll go.
Yeah, good point. I will tell you, when I was on the planning commission and we visited surface mining overlay, we had two very long meetings. One that was at least until midnight, one that extended past midnight. So we will listen to the people because that's who we represent. At this point, I'm not really planning on. What I will do is, like with any other hearing where comments are similar, I'll ask them to try to put them together and not repeat themselves all the time. But that will come later when we decide, actually when we're going to have this meeting. I think we need to remember that a mini petition has never reached the number of signatures enough to even discuss it. This is pretty historic. So I think that we need to be not so casual about what we're doing here. I think it's important that we allow people to say their piece and that we're open to listening to that. So you're saying, Council Medvedew, that you do have a conflict in the morning.
So if it is anticipated that we're going to have unlimited and go hours, I would vote for the morning, and we would just have to reset any conflicts that we have. We have enough time to do that. I don't want to be casual about this either. I want to have a full and open meeting. So I would vote for the morning so it can go as long as it needs to go within a reasonable time period.
Kathleen?
Yeah, I was just going to let you know, Councilor Medvedew, that meeting is the following week. So you do not have a conflict on the 1st. It's the 1st versus the 8th. So the 1st is your scheduled board meeting in the morning, and your meeting that you're referencing is actually on the 8th. So you are free on that day.
Madam Chair. So generally, I don't have a conflict in the morning or in the evening, but with the discussion regarding when we get the most callers, I agree with you. I think the number of callers and the number of people who want to be at the meeting is directly related to what's on the agenda. So I'm not sure that morning or evening, I know that somebody's going to have a conflict one way or the other, but typically the number of callers, the number of attendees at a meeting are based on what's on the agenda. I would say, though, that if the conversation is about providing access to people and the evening meetings give us that opportunity, I would suggest that we do both our meetings in the evening, our Tuesday meetings, and keep that consistent for everyone. And we don't have a one morning meeting and one evening meeting. We just have 2 evening meetings. So I know that's not something that the council has agreed to in the past, but there's some consistency there. And if the conversation is around access to callers and access to the community, then some consistency might help as well.
pretty consistently doing one morning and one evening meeting, and I'd like to keep it that way personally. So,
Just going with your train of thought in terms of access to the community. If the evening is better, then let's do both meetings.
right, and as you said, Councilor Olson, you said it really depends upon what's on the agenda. And so that is why I'm suggesting moving this particular hearing to the evening because of what is on the agenda. So Councilor Olson just said either way, she doesn't have a conflict either way. So can I hear from at least two other people about what they would like to, actually, I need to hear from all of you. What time would you like to set this on the first February first Tuesday of February? Morning.
Madam Chair, as Kathleen's focused me on the right date, 3 of us had the RTC meeting at 4 on that day, on the 1st.
They always make sure that we're out of there by 5:30.
Okay.
And if they know we have an evening meeting.
All right, I'm just bringing it to your attention. It would be, because, I mean, it's usually for me anyway, an hour of prep before. So it would be from 3 until midnight or whatever you're suggesting it may go. Anyway, I would vote for the morning.
Okay, I'm going to do this in motion form, so then we just get a vote. I'm going to move that we have the hearing the first Tuesday of February in the evening at 6 p.m. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to have our hearing on the first Tuesday of February at 6 p.m. Is there further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Looks like there's one no, because I didn't hear any others. I didn't hear a lot of yeses either, but I did have a second, and I heard from Bowerman. She was okay with the 6.
Yeah, no, I didn't vote yet.
Oh, well, the clock is ticking.
I just said no.
So-
There you go.
Oh, you just said no? Okay. Motion passes. We're going to meet at 6 p.m. on the first week in February, and I don't have that. Is it the 5th? The 3rd?
It's February 1st, Chair.
1st. Oh, okay. February 1st. All right, moving on to the next item under old business. Dr. Melnick, Board of Health update on the wrestling.
Good morning, councilors. Do you want me to say anything about the COVID numbers in general, or do you want me to leave it out and just talk about the wrestling
I
update?
think we were looking for a wrestling update.
Okay. So because there is some news on the numbers as well, that's why I asked about that. So as just to recall, we were first notified about a statewide outbreak in wrestlers. I believe it was Monday, December 13th. And I'm just to cut to the chase, I'll give you the total numbers on this. We've identified, first of all, the last case we're aware of was on December 21st. So, and as you know, there was a pause on activities through winter break. So the bottom line is, we're no longer in an outbreak situation there with the last case on December 21st. We identified 51 cases among wrestlers and coaches from 9 Clark County schools, and that included 6 school districts and 1 private school. And if you want, I could name those. I don't know how much detail you want. There were 45 cases amongst student athletes and 6 cases among coaches. These cases were tied to 7 events that occurred between December 4th and December 11th. 3 of those events were within Clark County and 4 of the events were elsewhere in the state. The 3 events that were tied to cases included the Columbia River High School wrestling event on December 4th, the Battleground Prairie Duel meet on December 8th, and the La Center Invitational on December 11th, and then the other events outside of Clark County included the John Burbeck Invitational in Lacey on December 4th, the Lady Jacks Kickoff Tournament in Puyallup on December 4th, Yelm Girls Varsity in Yelm on December 4th, and the Blaine Tournament on December 11th. So just a summary, 51 cases, last case on December 21st. And, those recommendations we made were through winter break. Certainly the schools can continue to have these events, have wrestling events, and they can be using the state guidelines around testing at these events. The state guidelines for high contact sports include testing of wrestlers as well as coaches, and referees 3 times per week, and with the requirement that the test be within 24 hours of the meet, preferably on the same day that you have a negative test. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know whether you have any additional questions. We do one last thing. We do think that that having a pause and a break, I think contributed to the fact that we're not, we don't have any additional cases right now.
Were there hospitalizations among these 51 cases?
Yeah, I heard that there were. I don't have details on that. I don't have an updated state report, but at some point I heard that there had been 3 hospitalizations, and I don't have details on that. I apologize.
Okay. Other questions of Dr. Melnick?
Dr. Melnick, if I could, thank you for that update. So as far as you know, wrestling will resume. The school isn't considering further extensions of the suspension, and did they actually ask for your advice regarding that decision?
So thank you. Great question, Councilor Medvici. This is a school decision as to whether to continue participation, and I suspect that most of the schools will be doing that, here as well as elsewhere in the state, as long as they still need to follow the state, the DOH guidelines for high contact sports, which I mentioned briefly. So I assume that these activities will resume or have been resuming.
Madam Chair.
Councilor Olson.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Melnick. And while you're here, if you do have the updated COVID numbers, I would be interested in hearing them while you're here. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, one thing the last I heard from the state, there were over 350 cases statewide associated with the wrestling events. So fairly good size outbreak. Okay. I'll really briefly
hang on just 1 minute. One of the reasons I didn't ask for further report was because of the caution that was given earlier about this being a wrestling update, and that's all it was. I don't mind getting, actually, I'd like to hear the numbers too. If we can limit the discussion about these numbers, I guess that would be a good thing. So if we can just hear the numbers and not have too much discussion about it, since this is not the Board of Health.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This will be real brief. So the numbers are, I'm looking at my notes here. The numbers are basically skyrocketing. And I mean that virtually literally in Clark County as well as in the state. So in the last week, we've had days where we've had 500 to 700 cases reported in one day. And if we look at the most recent, calculation of that 14-day rate per 100,000, the most recent one through January 1st is we're at 600 cases per 100,000. And that's greater. I think at the height of the Delta wave, at the height of the Delta wave, I think our highest was at 550. So we're already above that in terms of this surge. The state rate, the activity rate at the state, I believe, is 1,000 per 100,000. So, and the last report from the state was that Omicron was accounting for 25% of the cases, but that was a while ago, and these numbers are increasing. You know, Omicron increases rapidly. The hospital numbers, you know, they tend to lag behind the case numbers, but I know that the hospital numbers are beginning to increase. I just got a message from Peace Health that they're having a steady increase. So we'll have more information about the hospital numbers, but the numbers both in Clark County and statewide are going up considerably. So yeah, I just want to make, well, I know we can talk about it at the Board of Health meeting next week. But I will want to talk to you all about the questions about what we're looking for in terms of hospitalizations and severity and all that other stuff. So I'll wait until next week.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions of Dr. Melnick with regard to the wrestling? Nope. Okay, thank you, Doctor. We'll move on to new business. The request for a proclamation on human trafficking task force of Clark County.
Yeah, so we received a request to renew. We've done this one in the past. I actually took a look. We did very similar ones in 2018 and 2019, and we did a nearly identical one in January of 2021. So just background, former President Obama created the National Human Trafficking Awareness Month back in 2011. And so we have done similar, sorry, somebody's leaving me. Good, come on.
We have to have the code enforcement on the first. The other one's going to go for hours.
We can do it later.
The 15th, okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, sorry, I apologize for that. So the proclamation, the only change from last year, the prior proclamation had language in there regarding forced labor of persons under the age of 18. And this one removes that language and has forced labor of anyone where force, fraud, or coercion exists. But otherwise, it's identical to prior proclamations. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but the question is whether we put this on for the hearing in January.
Thank you. I have a question. Who is part of the Clark County Human Trafficking Task Force?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can get back to you on that.
Oh, it's not our sheriff's office or anything? It's a whole different.
I don't know.
Chair?
Okay.
Chair, I have a little information on it.
Hi, Sir Lance.
I know that Lindsay can get more complete information, but it includes a number of people from throughout the community. I attended a few meetings. Their meeting timing conflicts with our end of the month Board of Health meeting. So I haven't been able to go to very many. But the members from the YWCA, from the legal community, from law enforcement, and those who are other advocates throughout the community participate in it. So it's a collaborative effort through the community.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions about the proclamation? Any objection to having this on the agenda? I would hope not. Okay, great. We'll put it on the agenda for whenever it's appropriate. So, okay, moving on to the EDA Good Jobs Challenge Letter of Support.
So this was sent, and I think Councilor Bowerman may have some additional information on this, but this is a request for local government support for the work systems application to the U.S. Department of Commerce for 2021 Good Jobs Challenge and the collaboration and stuff. And I don't know, Councilor Bowerman, if you want to provide some additional information on this.
EDM is making available $500 million to regional entities throughout the nation for workforce development, where the work is done with employers to train workers for specific jobs that are higher end jobs. And so the Workforce Southwest Washington group is partnering with the Columbia Willamette Workforce Collaborative and Greater Portland Inc., with whom there is frequent collaboration for a regional workforce development application for what they call the Good Jobs Challenge. And it would be funding through that particular grant. The problem is that they are hoping to get that letter of support by January 7, which is 2 days from now. So I'm not sure how that can be accommodated, but that would be their request if we're willing to support it, which I certainly do.
Are there other questions? Maybe that's a motion, Councilor Bowerman, that we just go ahead and sign this letter electronically or whatever is necessary.
I'd appreciate that. Yes, and I so move.
Okay, and I'll second that. Is there further discussion? Any other questions or good stuff? Okay. Well, staff will be contacting you or well, okay, this is discussion. Let's have a vote. In favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to 2.3, redistricting process. And I think probably Leslie's going to present here too, as well.
Yes, good morning, Council. We are here to talk about redistricting and specifically to talk about what the next steps are. So there is the charter language that talks about the redistricting committee. Unfortunately, the redistricting committee did not submit a plan to the council and has taken an unanimous vote to disband. So now that the charter language does not apply, we look to the statute, which is 29A.76.010. And it's the statute that specifically states that it is the council's duty to come up with a redistricting plan. In terms of deadlines, the deadline is already passed. That deadline pursuant to the statute is December 31, 2021. So I suggest my council at this point would be to, move forward as fast as the council can to get this process started. There are certain criteria in the statute which talk about what's required in the plan. Specifically, under section 4, it says that each district shall be as nearly equal in population as possible to each and every other district. Each district shall be as compact as possible. Each district shall consist of geographically contiguous area. Population data may not be used for purposes of favoring or disfavoring any racial group or political party. And then the district boundaries shall coincide with existing recognized natural boundaries and shall, to the extent possible, preserve existing communities of related and mutual interest. And so what is required of the council pursuant to the statute is that during discussion and adoption of the plan, that full and reasonable public notice of the actions are given to the public. So what would happen is that the council would need to meet and discuss a plan. And then once there can be a vote as to a draft plan, which the statute doesn't provide for the number of votes that is required to pass a draft plan. So therefore we look, it would just be a simple majority, which would be 3 votes. Once the council has agreed to a draft plan, then the council would need to publish that plan and have a public hearing within 10 days of publishing the draft plan and at least 1 week before adopting it. And at that public meeting, the council would need to hear public comment, and then would then have to decide whether or not the council would vote to adopt that plan after public comment, or whether to make changes to the plan based on the public comment. If the council decides to make changes to the plan pursuant to the public comment, then the council would have to follow the same process, which is make the changes, publish the draft plan, set another hearing date, have additional public comment, and so on. And that would take place until those meetings would continue until the council, did not make any further changes. Now, to get started, what could happen is the council could set a special work session to talk about, the draft plan. But I would suggest that any vote to approve a draft plan would be in a hearing, in a public meeting, rather than a work session. So, but at least to get things started, I would suggest, again, as soon as possible, setting a work session to get that process started. It's my understanding that the council has received two suggested maps with explanation from prior members of the redistricting committee. And it is up to the council to decide if they want to consider those maps. The map that is currently in place is the one that was passed by the voters attached to Charter Amendment 3. So that is the map that the council would start with. So with that information, if you have any questions, I'm happy to do what I can to answer those.
Other questions of the council?
Well, the one issue that wasn't touched on was really the timetable that we have. And certainly it's been an awful year for the state. We saw it at the state level as well because of the census data coming so late. Our auditor is asking for a really compressed timeline because where the redistricting committee couldn't recommend or vote or approve a specific plan, the auditor has to have it. Candidates need to know what it is and to know whether or not they're in the right district or not. So what is the timeline? What's the absolute drop dead date that we have to get this done to satisfy all the interests and state law?
Well, the statute doesn't provide another date beyond the December 31 deadline. However, and I honestly don't know what the auditor's office, what deadline they would need for February elections, but I'm assuming they want it sooner than later. So unfortunately, I don't have any other hard deadline for you.
Do you know what's on the February ballot? How would the February election affect this particular thing? Does anybody?
That's a good question. I don't know what's on the ballot for February.
I'm not sure that the February election actually, I know that the auditor wants this done ASAP, but I'm not sure that having it done by the February election is actually reasonable. Maybe it is, I don't know. I guess our first work session may give us a hint to that. I do have a question. Did the redistricting committee have public testimony?
Yes.
Huh.
I believe there was public testimony on quite a number of times.
Okay, good.
And Chair, if I can add two things.
Sure.
I can send you the link, but on the elections website, it does show the voters pamphlet for the February ballot. There are school district items, the city of Vancouver, and a couple other things. So I'll forward that link to the council so you can see what's currently scheduled for the February ballot. And also if you're interested, I believe all the redistricting committee meetings, which would include the public testimony, were recorded and they're on our website as well. And if you would like that link, I can forward it to you.
Okay, thank you. It's good. Any other questions, Leslie, with regard to this, our reviewing this map situation?
I don't have any further questions. I do like Leslie's suggestion to have a special work session so we could look at the plans that were presented to us from the redistricting committee and talk about the issues. And I'd like to do that as soon as we can schedule it.
Yep, I think that's a good idea. I would agree. Any other comments or questions?
Chair?
Councilor Lance.
Yeah, I would support having a work session. I think to be clear, the work session should not be necessary. I mean, we should include reviewing the materials that were given to us, but that isn't the purpose. I would hope is not simply to just talk about those, but to talk about our process. Because what I was just hearing from Leslie is that essentially, since the redistricting committee failed to meet its obligation, we're now starting from scratch. Scratch being the map that was passed by the voters in Charter Amendment 3. So there is a wide range of things for us to potentially talk about. I would request that we see if Greg Kimsey could be available for that work session, as he was a part of the redistricting committee. Maybe perhaps not for the whole thing, but he could help explain some of their processes and what was done. And at minimum, also inform us about what he needs for May filing week for the elections that are affected by the changes here.
Other comments?
Yep, Madam Chair.
Councilor.
Thank you. Sorry, Councilor Bowerman.
That's okay.
Actually, I think having Greg Kimsey there is a really good idea. He was actually the master, if I'm not mistaken. So he wasn't? Okay.
No.
Okay. But
He was the chair.
Okay.
The GIS department was the master.
Yeah. Who was the master?
GIS person, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Paul from GIS.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I would support having somebody there who was part of the process, at least to get us kind of some additional background in addition to going back and watching some of those committee meetings. So that's all.
I would also suggest the GIS person who created the maps needs to be there. Absolutely.
I mean, let's get the logic behind the map that was under discussion. Yeah.
Yeah. Councilor Bauman.
I believe too that we should proceed as quickly as we can, but our schedule is rather formidable in that we have our own retreat in this month. Then on February 1, we have the mini initiative with a public hearing that will be lengthy. So exactly when we could get to this, it looks to me like we can't have the public hearings for this until the mini initiative is dealt with. So end of February, beginning of March. Is that reasonable then?
We don't have our retreat in January. It's in February.
Oh, really?
Yes. So, well, we have January to start this, and I would suggest that we do start it. At the very least, have a work session. I would love to hear the logic behind the map that appeared in the voters pamphlet. I'd really love to hear that logic. So, but I want to hear the logic around all of the maps. I think I understand it completely as far as what the voters pamphlet was about, but and it'll be wonderful to have a public hearing about that. And so I think we need to get this on the schedule as soon as we can with all of the people that need to be there in attendance. So I really believe we need to get this in January sometime.
That sounds terrific, Chair. When is our retreat?
We're looking at the dates right now, looking at calendars. It's usually the end of February, like the third week of February. It's not usually during a normal council meeting. I think it's on a Thursday for a half day or a full day, or sometimes 2 half days. So we're finalizing those dates now.
The end of February.
Yeah.
So if we were to have the work session in January, near the end of January, presumably, on this, then what would you think for the public hearings? Would that be in March?
If I can try to look at this. So When I'm looking at the calendar for next week, and this is also dependent on if people can attend outside, like the staff and Greg Kimsey and the auditor. Next Wednesday, you have a Board of Health. There is no work session. So we may be able to squeeze in a work session on this next Wednesday. But again, that's pending that there's availability of the key stakeholders. Anytime we do a hearing, it requires 10 days notice, and it's actually a little bit longer. The Columbian is our record, our official record, and they do require a little bit longer. So anytime that a draft map is done and is ready for a public hearing, we have to provide notice to the Columbian, and we can put it on any hearing, or you can do a special meeting as well and do a hearing at that time. So I also wanted to clarify who you would like at this work session. I heard the auditor, I heard the GIS staff who provided the technical assistance at the request of the redistricting committee. Are you wanting me to invite somebody from the Charter Review Commission? I just want to make sure that we're getting the people there that you want and what the focus of that discussion. I heard part of it is understanding behind why decisions were made or why the maps were made. I think another key, and it may be a second work session for the council, is for your time to deliberate on the actual map and the changes and boundaries as you see fit. And I would recommend at that meeting, whether that's part of next week or a future one, that you include the GIS staff just for the technical expertise. They're not there to provide advice or anything. They're there to take move the line on where you guys want to be. So I can see if they're all available next week, and then if needed, we can continue on. And you can do any special meeting with 24 hours notice on a work session. So it does not have to be on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. Anytime the council chooses, as long as we have the 24 hours notice to meet our mandatory reporting requirements.
Okay, thank you for that, Kathleen. So I would say, I don't know what the council's view on this is. For this first work session, do you think we need the GIS person immediately? Or because if we're going to be shown these maps, Greg will be there. I mean, if he's available, Greg will be there at whatever meeting we have. And then probably a following meeting is where there would be more activity with regard to the map or maps. But I would solicit your thoughts, the council's thoughts on who they would have there. I don't think the Charter Review Commission, nobody needs to be there at all.
Sure.
So
Medvedev,
go ahead, Julie. Or
Yep, thank you. Yep.
excuse me. Actually, I heard Councilor Medvedev's voice and I called on you, Councilor Medvedev.
Yeah, I actually asked
okay.
for, but that's okay. It doesn't matter.
So I think we have to keep the end game and timeline in view. I think if Greg Kimsey was listening to this, when he would have heard March, he probably would have been going, oh, no, that's too late. If any of us were candidates and thinking about filing, that we were probably going, oh, no, let's get this resolved sooner. I think we need to ensure whether we have questions or not at that first meeting of GIS. I think they should be there in case we do, because we need to really get to the heart of this and resolve it as quickly as we can. I did want to ask Leslie one confirmatory question on the vote that we have to take. Once we have a plan that we say, okay, let's put this up for a vote, does it take 3 or does it take 4 votes to approve that plan?
Certainly. Thank you, Councilor Medvedev. It takes 3 votes.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm sorry, Councilor Olson is next. I didn't mean to interfere with that.
Yes, Councilor.
Thank you. Yeah, I think in the first meeting, given the charter language and the obligation of the redistricting master, that person should be at that first meeting to give some background and specifically how they drew the plan. So I would hope that he or they or whomever would be at that first meeting. And then I did have another comment, but in terms of the districts, this is just council districts. So granted, people want to know kind of what district they live in if they're considering filing for election, but there's no election that would take place between now and, May filing date that would impact these districts. So, so I don't, while we want to get it done sooner rather than later, I don't think there's this like right now deadline that we have to meet. So.
Yeah, I would agree with both observations or comments that you made. It's GIS person, if it complicates, getting together. But that said, it really is May when we have to, filing time, we have to have it done. I hope that we are thinking we actually do want to get it done much sooner than that, but agreed. Any other comments? Councilor Bowerman.
Yes, every time we refer to the GIS person, I just want to be sure that what we mean is the person who served as the master in the process.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, no,
The master.
many good GIS people, but that's the one we want to hear from.
Other comments? Okay, I guess then what we need to do is see if we can't, Kathleen, to try to get schedules together to have that meeting next week after the Board of Health. We'll take a break in between. Okay, thank you. Okay, it looks like we've finished the new business. Councilor reports.
I did have one issue that I did email to everyone.
Councilor Medved.
Thank you. This morning, I sit on the Children's Justice Center. Tony Golick chairs that meeting. And this, as you know, this is something near and dear to my heart, having spent most of my career as a prosecutor working with children as victims. Forensic interviewers, victim advocates, the CASO is a different issue, but all of those have had some funding turbulence the last few years. We've had a pandemic. We have a bulge of cases coming through. The Juvenile Justice Center is asking for us to support them seeking two separate grants, one for a part-time victim advocate and one for a forensic interviewer. I really feel very strongly we should support both efforts, and I'm hoping that the county manager would. So I'm advocating for a joint letter from the manager as well as the counselors in supporting both grants. There also would be most likely a follow-on request from the CJC on the victim advocate position. The grant would only allow for part-time funding. What they would seek is a bridge from ARPA funds so that they could make it full-time. So that's really somewhat of a separate issue, but I did forward the sample letters, and I'm hoping we could get that on for discussion. It just came up this morning, so it didn't make it to this agenda, but I'm hoping that we could all support it. I'm hoping the county manager would support CJC seeking these two grants.
Is there a deadline for this?
I believe it's next Friday. So you have,
Okay.
if you want, you can have time this week to review. I think it's the 9th, if I remember correctly. And then you can meet next week and decide on it if you're not ready today, and it's due that Friday.
Okay. Because it wasn't on the agenda and is coming up in counselor reports, I think we should put it off to, even though I'm very much for it, getting these grants for sure. But if the council wants to move forward, I'm okay with that, unless you want to actually hear a little bit more about these various positions, their needs, etc.
The chair.
Yeah, Councilor Bauer.
I notice in Amy Russell's letter that you sent us, Councilor Medved, it says that she would like the letters of support back by end of day on Monday, January 10. So, to accommodate that, I would be willing to move forward today.
Is that a motion, Councilor Bowerman? You're muted.
The letters are not yet drafted, correct? So Is there a sample letter that has been sent, Counselor Midwidgy?
Yeah, those were sample letters. I sent them to Lindsay, who's our master draftsman, hoping that we could move forward and she could work on a letter that
Yeah.
all of us could sign.
There is a draft letter that's attached to the email that Counselor Mevigi sent to the
Great.
council this morning.
Then I would move that we adapt those letters as needed, that Lindsay would adapt those letters as needed.
I would second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve and adapt the letters as needed for CJC for these 3 grant positions and the other, which would be supplemented by the ARPA funds for both the council and the county manager. Is there further discussion?
Chair?
Councilor Lentz.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this, and given the timeline, I think this is the right approach. These are worthwhile. I think that the chair made a good point about timing, and I just wanted to reference that for future. We had a lot of instances in the last year where materials were brought to us on the day of a council time meeting, and decisions were made on that day. There wasn't ample time necessarily for review or for the public to review the materials that we were discussing. So I would request in the future, if we can make whatever effort possible to have, even if things come to us at a meeting, to potentially, oh no, I think I just popped out. Hopefully not.
You're still there.
I think I just froze. I apologize.
Now
for
she's
that.
out.
I apologize for that. I don't know where I stopped. So I'll just say I'll request in the future that we have more time to discuss things to the extent we're able to, that if something comes to us at a meeting, that perhaps we try not to make a decision on it until the next meeting. Again, this particular one, there's a timeline. We know the organizations. I think this is fine, but I'd make that request for the future when possible.
Right. Agreed. Other comments? Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Other councilor reports? Session
Chair?
requests. Oh, Councilor Lentz.
I'll try and see if my internet connection holds up. I just had a couple from the end of the year. The Area Agency on Aging did meet just before, like the Friday before the council broke, so didn't have an opportunity to update on that. But for the quarterly meetings for that agency, things are going along very well. We had an annual review of the director who's been with the group as the director for about a year. And so he's only served during COVID, but he's doing an admirable job, and things are going along quite well with that organization. And also JPACT had its December meeting, and a lot of the conversation around JPACT, which is the metro-based transportation committee that we have a seat on, is a lot of discussion around the Oregon's tolling plans to basically toll every freeway in the city of Portland and in the region, and a lot of the discussion around the impacts of that. Still no decisions are being made, no votes on the tolls, but a lot of discussion about mitigating impacts and ensuring that the voices of the cities outside of Portland are being heard.
Thank you. Other councilor reports? Okay, moving on then to policy issues from Lindsay. All right, no, work session requests first.
There are no work session requests today.
Anything on the policy issues, Lindsay?
Just a quick legislative update from me. First of all, we have our weekly legislative calls beginning on Monday, January 10th, and wanted to give everybody heads up at this point that the call the following Monday on January 17th will happen. It's Martin Luther King Day. And so, of course, the county offices are closed, but the legislature is open. And so we will have that call as scheduled. So just wanted to give everybody heads up on that. Also wanted to let you know a couple of bills that have dropped recently. There are a couple regarding COVID vaccinations that are sponsored by Republicans. I don't anticipate that they're going to get much traction, but I'm sure they will get some attention. One is to treat those who've recovered from COVID equal to those who are immunized. And another is entitled Protecting the Rights of Those Who Refuse the COVID Vaccine. So again, just those will be topics of conversation, but I don't anticipate they will make it to the governor's desk. A couple of bills regarding ADUs. One, House Bill 1711, would authorize local governments to incentivize ADUs that specifically are not authorized for short-term housing, typically Airbnb or similar platforms. And another one regarding owner occupancy requirements on properties with an ADU. And then we're also seeing a couple of bills regarding broadband, some with some fairly bipartisan support, House Bill 1722 and 1723. 1723 is an omnibus bill regarding rural broadband. So I think we'll definitely see some discussion on that. And then there's a Senate Bill 5664, establishing some statewide procedures for handling the Blake cases and how those will be processed. So definitely some things that will impact the county and discussions that we'll have beginning on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, we are going to go into executive session. I'm not sure if there's any action afterward, but there's pending in litigation, according to RCW 42-42.30.110(1)(I) for 10 minutes. And so that means we would come back here in council time at 11:32, let's say 11:33 or 34, because we need time to come out of this and go into that. So
Chair O'Brien, there will be action afterwards.
okay, there will be action afterwards. All right. So thank you. I will see you on the other side in the executive session and back to you after
Just
that.
to I'm sorry to interrupt, just to confirm, so we will be coming back at 11:34, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. To council time coming out of work session. And I believe we have a motion.
So Madam Chair, I do have a motion. I'm gonna have to wing it. I didn't get any email on my iPad or iPhone as to the suit name, but I am making a motion to indemnify the one named sheriff's deputy in the suit regarding the stop. You have to fill in the blanks for the litigation.
Look at emails from me. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just didn't get them.
Can someone who has it state the motion, and Counselor can just then.
Leslie, could you state the motion, or could we get some help here, please?
Yes, I was just locating it in my email as well. The
Thank you.
motion is to make a motion to grant Clark County Sheriff Deputy Slav Pavlenko's request for the county to provide a defense and indemnification in the lawsuit entitled Anna Kuhn versus Clark County et al. Pursuant to Clark County Code 2.97.025.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to do justice was said. Is it all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. That is the conclusion of our business today. Thank you all. We are adjourned.